Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Author Chats. Today with me, I have Ben Galley, who is the best-selling author of the Emaneska series and the Chasing Graves trilogy. There's a trilogy. Am I right, Ben?
It is indeed, yeah.
Indeed. So I'd like to welcome Ben here tonight. As a little fun fact for everyone, Ben was the first author I ever met in a professional capacity, which we can maybe talk about that story a little
Yeah,
bit and how you held my hand at a convention one time. But before we get into everything, why don't you introduce yourself, Ben? Let us know about who you are.
sounds good. Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I am Ben Galley. I'm the author of, as you said, Emaneska series, the Skeleton Chronicles, Heart of Stone, Chasing Graves trilogy, and the Scarlet Star trilogy as well. I almost forgot that one. And yeah, I've been writing and publishing since 2010. Started out with Emaneska, and yeah, just kind of loving and have loved and will probably always love the indie life, the self-publishing life. And yeah, personally, I was from the UK, hence why if anyone thinks me being in Canada means I'm Canadian, no, I'm British. Moved out here 5 years ago, and yeah, currently living in Vancouver. And yeah, that's pretty much me. I like to game, like to try and snowboard and fall over a lot. Uh, yeah,
You're always on
that's
some
it.
adventure. You're always posting photos from some kind of adventure or another.
Yeah, well, it's lucky just being like where I am and stuff. But yeah, I've always loved adventure and travel and stuff like that. And obviously, haven't done a huge amount of it in the last couple of years, unfortunately. But yeah, always like to get out in the nature and yeah, light a fire, throw an axe around or some knives and shoot a bow and that sort of thing, or see somewhere new that I haven't seen before. So yeah, as close as I can get to my fantasy world,
All for
I think.
research, right? All for research.
All for
Yes.
research and tax purposes as well. I could, yeah. For instance, I went to Dubai for a research trip when I was writing Chasing Grace trilogy, and that was fun. Good excuse.
That's right. So let's go back in time a little bit because I think like we have a lot of indies that come on and chat to me here, but you were probably out of everyone that I've spoken to so far, at least, you're probably one of the earliest people to publish way back in the when the Kindle was first getting started.
Dark ages.
Which seems like a very long time ago now. Just, I mean, it's not that long ago, but just in terms of how things have changed in the space and the industry across the board, and um, it feels like a very long time ago, like a different lifetime in some ways.
It
So
really does.
can you take us back? Because I've always thought that was a really interesting story about when the
Yeah.
Kindle first comes out and it first becomes available as a self-publishing platform. I mean, what the
Mm.
heck was going through your head? How did all that come to be? Because it must have been a real bleeding edge sort of move at that point.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we all know that like self-publishing isn't technically, just didn't start in 2007 with the launch of the
Sure.
Kindle and
Yeah.
KDP. But I've always heard that like you could argue that Mark Twain and Virginia Woolf were self-published. I'm like, yeah, fair enough, that's cool. But yeah, that was just a huge game changer. It was groundbreaking, and it really just hacked down a gate that had stood for maybe 100 years or so. Of being just able to publish something directly to the public and on the big stores and retailers, obviously Amazon especially. And it was just, yeah, it was great. I mean, I came into the game published December 2010, and but I was kind of writing and researching and doing a lot of stuff and prepping myself to be an author from sort of 2008 onwards. So it was just really well timed. And I saw a lot of, I definitely wouldn't say I was the first, but I saw a lot of the early success that a lot of authors had on that platform and on Amazon, and the way that it made the publishers just sit up and think like, what the hell, who are all these people in the bestseller lists, And so yeah, it was really it was kind of like Wild West, because there wasn't a lot of information, or there was information, but a lot of it kind of conflicted. So it was at that time very difficult to find your way. I made a lot of mistakes, which was great, because I get to kind of pass it on and stop people from making those mistakes, and these days. But yeah, it was just kind of like a sort of throw yourself in, and see what happens, and then just go with it. Because everyone was like finding their feet. Algorithms, AMS, things like mailing lists, reader magnets, all of those had yet to become like standardized and
Yeah.
uh, you know part of what all of us really do. And so yeah, it was kind of crazy. I managed to get up to sit next to George R. R. Martin for a while, in the early days of KDP. So yeah, it was a little bit easier to rank a little bit higher, and there were certain
Sure.
things you could
Yeah.
do that have since been patched up. Setting your book free for a bit and then turning it back to paid and putting a price on it, and it would stay at the same ranking, which like it was great. So yeah, that was kind of fun. But aside from that, it was just it's maintained its kind of momentum and impetus, and maybe not as game changing and groundbreaking each year since 2007 and the early days, but it's still constantly developing. Indie authors are seeing success, hand over fist, and fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, it's changed a bit. It does feel like a long time ago actually, because I look back on my first books and I'm like, whoa. I was a
Yeah,
completely
right.
different person in a
Well,
different
I have
world,
war,
different
and
country.
it's half the time or something. It's
Mm,
so even longer. And you've got a cool story about that first book, right? You wrote it one of those wrote it on the phone sort of stories.
yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely. It
tell us
was
about that because I think people find those both infuriating and inspiring at the same time.
Oh, yeah, and it wasn't on like God, what 2010? I forget which iPhone it even was. Maybe iPhone.
Basic iPhone.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to think when they came out. Yeah, 4 or 5, something like that. And I was working, like, my background is bars and pubs and restaurants and things like that. And working as a barman server, working in the kitchen sometimes as well. So I've done a lot of the hospitality and service industry, and it's never a career. It was never a career kind of path for me, and I just wanted to get out of it ASAP. Because I was just tired of people I work with and the public, and just that job can be grueling. Servers aren't paid enough. People who work in bars aren't paid enough. And so yeah, I always had this dream of being a writer ever since I was young. Wrote my first books around like uh, age 11, 10, 11, 12, that sort of thing. And yeah, just kind of got back into the love of it. And because I was at work so much, just paying for my life, between customers would just sit, kind of turn around at the back of the bar and just do a little typing
Right, yeah,
on my
just type
phone,
away.
paragraph by paragraph. If it was a really quiet, like, I don't know, Monday morning, no one's coming in, apart from a few regulars. And yes, I used to get, like, maybe a whole chapter done on a shift. And then would go back, format it, load it up onto, or email it to myself. I lost a few chapters here and there. That's because,
Right.
you know, thumbs going awry, and just or accidentally deleting it and stuff like that. Again, the Notes app isn't what we have now. I was just writing on Notes. And yeah, so it took, I would say, I think it was about 18 months to actually produce that between 2008, 9, and then publishing in 10. A lot of 2010 was spent on just, redoing the book, learning how to edit things. I made the mistake of self-editing as well, just since rectified. But I also had no money, because at
Well,
this
that, yeah,
time I was also a music
that's
student. That's
gotta make
it.
do.
That's what. Yeah, I kind of had no choice, and I was like, for want of a better word, well, maybe it is the best word, desperate. I had so much passion, and I just wanted to, hop on this bandwagon and just be the author I'd always dreamt to be, or just do that, have the career that I'd always dreamt of. And so, yeah, just powered through. I remember then the lowest point was working in Guildford train station back in the UK, and I was working in a small kiosk that sold pasties and hot dogs and like Cornish pasties, and it was awful. I had to get up and get there by 4 a.m., go into like a minus 30-degree freezer in the winter as well, and then just have all
Oh,
the angry commuters heading to London, of which there were thousands, back just having a go at you in the
of which
morning.
they are legion. Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh, so
That
many.
sounds awful, man.
So that was, yeah, that was the lowest point where I was just like, there's a
Did
sign that
you
I
put a
belong.
character in the book in sub-freezing conditions with lots of angry
Yes.
commuters?
Well, I think I think kind of, because Emaneska is all like a frozen world, right? So it was like definitely kind of influencing a lot of that. And there's like a picture that like one of my friends took where I just had a stack of papers on the back shelf of this tiny like 9 by 9 kiosk with an oven in it and just pasties everywhere. And just making the red notes with the red pen on the first or second draft. And yeah, so it was real kind of like power through. But again, I kind of like, looking back on it, it was worth it, and it's what drove me to be here. So yeah, it was it was tough writing on the phone, but managed it. And luckily, the second book I wrote mostly on my laptop and a bit on the phone while I was still working bar jobs. So yeah, and yeah, like I said, I was a music student, or kind of had been a music student for some of those years as well. So that was kind of, that took up a lot of time. I'd write kind of at school as well, or at college. Yeah.
It's quite. I mean, I'm just impressed by that. You said desperate there in the middle of that, but it's just we'll use
Mm.
drive. Drive is the best word, I think.
Drive is,
Just
that's a
that
better
sheer.
word actually.
It's the sheer, just the
Yeah.
sheer determination to push through all that and get it done
Mm.
regardless. And I think when some people hear that, I mean, hopefully they find it inspiring because they might not be writing on their phone at a pastry kiosk at 4 in the morning, you know, and so they hopefully they feel like actually, what I'm trying to do isn't quite so hard as that, so I should just push through whatever sticky point I am in my book, you know? And a lot of people will get
Yeah.
stuck at stuff, but it's just you got to push
Mhm.
through. And if you can push through conditions like that, that means you clearly wanted it. I'm going to break
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
fourth wall just a tiny bit here. Some folk listening in are saying you're quite quiet. Could you try
Oh,
maybe
quiet.
bringing the microphone closer or something? See if
Absolutely
that
can.
can
Yeah.
pick up for some folks.
How's that? Is that better?
Oh, that's much better, I think.
Okay. No
Hopefully
worries.
that's
So,
better for
but yeah,
everyone
we'll
else.
turn this
There
up.
we go. Everyone's saying that's better. Good stuff.
Awesome.
Um,
Sweet.
just on
Cool.
that topic where we're
Okay.
talking about writing on the phone in the kiosk and stuff. Nowadays, now that you're not writing that way and you've got a laptop and you've got a
Mm.
cool setup, um, what software? This is from a question from Samuel Kaufman,
Mm.
who's joining us today. What software do you use to write? Are you a Word person? Are you a Vellum person, or do you use some secret new software that I haven't discovered?
I am using Pages on Mac, so I've used that for I'd say the last 7 or 8 years. No, probably 7 years. Before that, I was on. Actually, no, yeah, it's probably. I think I wrote the Written on Word, which was the first book in the Emaneska series that was written on the phone. And then, yeah, after that, I kind of got myself a Mac and switched to, yeah, Pages, which is just, I don't know, it was just really simple. It's like they've stripped all the stuff out of Word and then just kind of put it back in a nicer way. So I really, really appreciate that and really like its kind of formatting options as well. For instance, you can drop an image into it and it doesn't throw everything out the window, which like
Right. Yes.
Word
Yeah.
does quite easily. So yeah, I do a lot of like design in it as well. It's just quite a nice sort of canvas to kind of manipulate like images and simple texts and fonts and stuff like that. So yeah, find it really useful. Not sure if you can get it if you're not on a Mac, but if you can, awesome. I know you can get it on like an iPhone or an iPad as well, which is quite useful. So yeah, really, really enjoy that. Highly recommend it. I just can't, I don't know, I can't stand Word after like, so many documents being lost and, I wrote a couple of books on it when I was a kid and ugh,
Yeah. Maybe.
can't go
Yeah.
back.
Well, I use Word like a basic, you know, like a basic writer. But I've gotten quite used to making the headers and stuff, which sort of helps the navigation
Mm,
out. And I've always had Dropbox, so I've never lost anything. And so I don't know. I don't use Macs, so I don't really bother with Scrivener. So
yeah,
yeah,
I've
there
started
you go.
using InDesign for sort of the formatting of it and turning it into like paperbacks and stuff. And InDesign is yeah, pretty damn good. It takes a while to learn. It took me a little bit.
Yeah,
And
at least
yeah, so I
it's
use
much
that
more
second
advanced.
stage.
You'll get much prettier books, but that's a whole other skill. Uh,
It's long. It's
right,
really
yeah.
long. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'll probably stick to Vellum. Vellum is a
Mm,
software that we use to format books, or most writers will use this software
mhm. Yeah, I've
because
heard
it's
great things.
very very easy, very very simple, but it makes things relatively basic looking but clean, and
Mhm.
if you look at my paperbacks, guys, that's what I use Vellum. It's very straightforward. People that use InDesign like Ben are the pros, but it's a whole other
No.
skill, and like it just scares me. I'm like, no, I've got enough to do. I'll leave that to someone
Yeah.
else.
I just googled the
But
basics.
you
That's
also
all I
do.
did.
You're quite good. You make your own maps up, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, it's something I did as a kid. I've got folders of things that I'll probably never show anyone. That I've just yeah, when I was just I don't know how old I would say from about 6 or 7, I was always like making up fantasy worlds, and initially I started drawing them out. And it was just yeah, just kind of something like a little hobby that I had. And I would do kind of what's it called, cutaway of like ships and like spaceships and stuff like that, and castles, and very badly. I'm not a very good artist at all, but maps somehow is something I did kind of get into and kind of practice at, and did reason. I think yeah, they're reasonably good. They're nowhere near some of the top cartographers around. I mean, they're good for my books, and I've got some good compliments on them, and yeah, and it's something I really enjoy. Like spending just 2 hours just drawing mountains is really sort of cathartic and like
Right.
therapeutic.
Very therapeutic. Yeah.
Just and it's just really fun. And so yeah, and it was one of those things that when I was starting out, I wanted to limit the amount of expenditure and the cost of upsy publishing. Hence the decision to self edit. And so yeah, drawing a map just made sense to me as well because I was like, well, I can do this. And at that point, I did it a really old school method, which was well, not old school, but I would because I did this when I was a kid. I would get a piece of paper, draw the map, and spend hours doing that in pencil, then ink, shading and stuff like that, and then tea stain it. So the maps that are in the original written, you can actually see uh, one line from where I then tea stained it and put it in the oven. So I actually grilled the maps slightly accidentally, but it kind of looked good. And so then did a high res
And it's
scan of that. Yeah, so you got that
self-publishing
texture, and I was just
101,
like,
guys.
this is it. This is like pure, yeah, basic
Grill
stuff.
your
I was
map.
like, well, I
Yeah.
can do this. Put it in the oven, 200 C for about, I'd say 10 minutes. Tea stained, of course. It's just really fun to do. It's something that I did like with my dad, when he would burn the edges of like the maps as well to give them really cool texture, and just like a really fun, just like, I don't know, thing he used to do. And yeah, so kind of learned how to do that. And so yeah, they kind of are high res scans of kind of actual maps, rather than I figured out how to use things like Procreate now and Photoshop and all that stuff.
I tried Procreate over Christmas, and I decided
Mm,
like InDesign, it was something I didn't have the patience to master, and I would just
mm,
hire someone that knows what they're doing
yeah.
to do the next map. So that's my
Yeah.
cop out. Yeah,
No, there's
absolutely.
nothing wrong with that. I just use one setting. I normally delete things quite a lot, and I'm drawing all over the place, with like the back of my hand as I'm trying to do that. So, yeah, it's not necessarily a lot quicker, but it's just digital is slightly easier. I don't have to grill maps anymore.
Yeah. Nor do you self-edit anymore, I presume.
No, thank the Lord. Honestly, I am. I mean, you obviously, writing is a skill, as we all know, and it takes practice, and so does editing. Obviously, editing is a highly honed skill for a lot of people, and I've learned a bit and learned to what like for instance, I put certain words in repeatedly over and over, and editors can catch that, and I might miss it. But so I've got like a few skills from kind of just working with editors, but you've got to use professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tidy it up pretty well, but the real magic comes in once someone else kind of looks at it. Beta readers, that's a stage I use as well. But yeah, sharing it with people and then going to a professional editor, just yeah, there's no excuse not to.
That kind of ties into a question that we have here from Alicia. She's
Mm,
asking about, do you use beta readers? So, do you want to walk us
mm,
through your process there? Like, do you go for beta readers to editor and then back to the beta readers? Like, what order do you do
mm.
things in?
Yeah, so for the last two books, I've kept them pretty close to the chest. So I haven't worked. I've worked with a couple of my betas, but not my like whole usual team. But otherwise, yeah, it's a process that I will put in after I do usually the second draft. So I'll write it. That'll be the first draft, and then I'll go through and kind of do a lot, not necessarily rewrites on a whole scale. Like I won't take out a whole chapter and rewrite it, but I'm doing very, very, line and copy based editing, just tidying things up, going back and forth, making sure I've kept the fact that I've put blue eyes on this character and that they got
Yeah,
blue eyes
yeah.
later, because I'm constantly changing eye color and hair color. And yeah, so I have to catch that sort of stuff. Then yeah, I share it with people, see what they think, and that catches some of the silly edits that might just not waste an editor's time, but they could be focusing on other stuff. And yeah, just sort of like share it with people, get some feedback, and if I need to do more rewrites, I then do those, and then yeah, it goes to a professional editor for a copy edit. And then sometimes I've used a proofreader after that as well, after I've gone through the edits, or do a second stage of proofreading with with the same editor. And so usually, that kind of I mean, I don't know. I know there are still mistakes somewhere, because they always are.
Yes,
I found
there's
Did you see
always
that
there's
meme?
always some mistakes. It's always
There's
so
always.
aggravating. You go through
Yeah,
so many steps, and you've oh my god,
yeah.
and you have
And
to go
then what
back
was
in and
that?
upload the file.
Yeah. What was that tweet? I was gonna say, or meme I saw. It's like how to find spelling mistakes in your novel, and it's like step one, publish novel. Step two,
Publish
wait
it.
2 weeks, open at a random page, and you'd be like,
Yeah,
oh, there's two thes. Oh yeah, but it's kind of like it's
it's
one of those things. It's just funny for an author now, isn't it?
yeah.
Just
Step
part and
three,
parcel.
wait for those helpful emails from people telling you all about them.
Or yeah, 3-star reviews or one
Yeah,
star review. Yeah.
I spotted one mistake, 1 star.
Yeah, I know. I honestly, let's say that I picked up a book, and I think it's the UK version, and I spotted probably about 10 mistakes I'd say in the first chapter, maybe two chapters if I remember rightly, of a book from an author that's, let's just say, doing very well on Kickstarter right now. I'll say no more.
How
But yeah, I mean,
coded?
that's the thing.
How will we ever work that out?
uh, Yeah, I mean, it's more like the publisher and stuff like that, and it's it's fine. I mistakes don't really bother me, but I was like, huh, interesting. Not
Yes,
just
well, it
me.
is a phenomenon. We talk about it in our offer friends a lot how it
Mm,
seems, and maybe it's just maybe we just project that it feels like we get a bit more flack for mistakes than big traditional
mhm.
authors would. Uh, and I don't know
I
what to
think
put
so.
that down to, other than people are looking for it, or it's just a different mindset, perhaps, of like
Mm,
if you find a mistake in Game of Thrones, you can go, "Oh, look, I caught a mistake. Isn't that funny?" And you
mhm.
just move on. You sort of like shrug it off, and then when you find a mistake in one of our books, it's like, "Oh, see, I
Yeah.
knew this self-published thing was
Ye
a joke." Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That's just like I know my book is not riddled, and there have people been like, "It's riddled with errors." It's like it's absolutely not. There's like 2
exactly.
maybe. Yeah.
Oh
Ah,
well, oh well, such
classic.
is life. In Emaneska,
Yeah.
then let's go back onto the series a little bit,
Mm,
because I think Emaneska is what you're most known for, right? Because there's
I'd
five
say
or
so.
six
Yeah.
books in that one, and then you've started another trilogy in that
Mhm.
same, or another series in that same world. It's kind of like an
Yeah.
extension of that first series, so it's a long series now. What has been the most challenging thing about that? Because you mean you started it, like you say, back in 2009.
Mhm.
We're now a good bit later. There's however many books, 7 or 8 or something at this point. Like, what's the most challenging thing
Yeah.
of keeping that going?
Ooh, I would say just consistency. Again, like changing eye colors is not the only thing I do. I will have I've changed a character name accidentally and realized that like way towards the
Yeah,
end of almost publishing it. But I mean, it was quite lucky that so yeah, the Emaneska series, I finished by I want to say 2013. So I got those first 4 books out. The written Pale Kings, Dead Stars Part One, Dead Stars Part Two. They came out pretty close together, and I was sort of writing them really close together as well. Like I wrote Dead Stars One and Two at the same time and just split it because it was just a behemoth. And then Pale Kings, I set myself a random challenge of trying to write it in 100 days, which I did, but almost drove myself mad because I wasn't like, I was still getting into writing essentially and still learning and practicing. Um, so yeah, it was kind of useful at that stage to have a lot of the information just kind of in my head without taking a long break between the books.
yeah,
And so, but it's still hard. So I made like a lot of notes and a lot of like a story bible and things like that. And then yeah, from that point, the difficulty was then going back to it 2 years ago to write the Scallison Chronicles, which is Forever King and Heavy Lies the Crown. And even though it was 20 years afterwards, and a lot had changed, and I could kind of start again because it's a fresh entry into Emaneska as well as the last book. It's sort of like both a sequel and a first entry into the series. But I was like, I've forgotten everything, because I've written 2 more series, and then other books and short stories
yeah.
and things like that. So it's just remembering everything. I had to go back and I kind of did a reread of my own books, which is it was tough. It's always difficult to do that because by that point I'd kind of changed not my style but how I view things, and I wanted to be like, oh, I could have done that. I'm still proud of it, very proud of it, and I'm people say it's good. But yeah, I just kind of viewed it with this like quite critical lens, and so yeah, did a reread, forced myself through it, made a load of notes on like yeah, these are the threads, and this happened in this specific year, and made sure I had all the facts. And yeah, so that just kind of led into quite a tricky, like Forever King was tricky to write just because I had to join it up and balance out no
Yeah.
spoilers for the past,
Mhm.
as well as a satisfying kind of like a new series for existing readers. So that was tough. But yeah, mostly just consistency, I'd say, and just keeping all those facts in there because it's a big world as well. It's got 2,000 years of history that I've written out. So yeah, I'm a planner and a world builder as well. So that's kind of my fault sometimes.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, anything that got. I mean, even just working on the third book now in the series, I'm like
Mm,
constantly going back to the previous two. I've got the other two
yeah,
opened up all the time to check things, like you say, eye color, just someone's
mhm,
accent, whatever the heck. I'm
that's it.
like, you think you've got your notes, and then you find your notes are lacking because there's this little detail that you're sure you've did, but you can't quite remember. And you go,
Yeah,
and you can't find it. It's,
yep, that's
yeah.
it.
Can
Yeah,
someone
like
make
how
a
many
wiki for us, please?
dragons? That's it. That'd be great. I could actually check my own wiki. Well, that's the thing. I was kind of forced to with this like appendix, like when I ran the Kickstarter for. I'm redoing the written at the moment into an
Yeah,
illustrated edition, and see, I promised an appendix, and I was like, oh shoot, yeah, I need to actually kind of put
that's
that
good.
together. Yeah, so that's been great. That's like I actually have to the date, like, oh, the plague arrived at this date, or this person had a war and that sort of stuff. So that's really useful. But that's like 10 years later. So yeah, it's kind of fun though. But yeah, as far as like, oh, how many dragons did I have in this battle, or what spells did I write in this giant list of spells at that point? 8 years ago. Yeah, kind of fun.
Another question in from folk listening is,
Mm.
what genres do you write in these days? Because you've moved around a little bit, but broadly always in fantasy, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and you've done some dark, you've done some western, you've done some
God.
epic, and now you're working on more epic stuff in Emaneska and
Mhm.
a kind of and you've got a new series in the works. I don't know if you can talk about that yet,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to talk a little bit about it. Yeah. Yeah, so I did yeah, Emaneska was Nordic and is Nordic epic fantasy. It's also kind of called, even though it's not elves, dwarves, and lots of different races, it's very human based, at least for the first two books. Um yeah, people class it as high fantasy as well. It's been called that quite a lot. So yeah, you could call it high fantasy. Low fantasy as well, because I do kind of write with a grittier edge. Morally grey, anti-heroes, love them. Violence, definitely, but not violence for the sake of it. I've never been one of these people where, I don't like sexual violence, for example. I've rarely ever used that. I don't think I've it's like maybe alluded to it here and there if I can remember. But yeah, it's and also violence against animals. I don't really like. It's needless animals
Mm.
violence, that sort of stuff. I mean, dragons die here and there, but that's about it. So yeah, I kind of like that kind of level of gritty, and then
Yeah.
just kind of like more of a kind of gothic horror sort of darkness. Yeah, rather than what people normally ascribe to like grim dark and dark fantasy is just splatter gore, which is it's fine for some people. But yeah, so then I did a hard left turn into wild western fantasy slash steampunk slash alternate history. So that was the Scarlet Star trilogy, and I had fun with that. That was just a kind of like, I'm going to write whatever the hell I want. And this idea just kind of like got to me by the time I was kind of finishing Emaneska. So that was fun. Fairies in a Wild West setting, guns, blood magic, and lots of political wheelings and dealings with noble families, alternate history, that sort of fun stuff. Yeah, and then I did, went back to kind of military epic fantasy with Hearthstone. Chasing Graves was grimdark, absolutely just grimdark, but yeah, again, not very gory or well, not overly gory. I'm kind of thinking now. And yeah, so yeah, grimdark, dark fantasy, back to that, and I've been writing back to the Nordic fantasy, epic fantasy, and then recently progression fantasy. So again, epic, but just kind of more of a progressive element, kind of I would say lit RPG, but treading the waters a little bit, which has been really fun. Quite a learning curve, having to rank everything and have all this sort of stuff
Yeah.
for the world. Because you've done lit RPG with Battlespire, haven't you?
Yeah, I
And
did a full fat lit RPG. That was
yeah,
fire.
which
Yeah.
I hear great things about. And it's just yeah, um, I don't know if you found it tough, but I kind of found the rankings and having to write to like a structure and levels and yeah, kind of difficult, but fun. Yeah.
Um, with Battlespire, it was the most fun I've ever had writing a book, and it was the quickest I've ever written a book. I
Mm,
wrote it in like 3 months, which is obscenely fast for
awesome.
me.
Yeah.
I mean, usually it's taken me a lot longer. It does. It
Mm,
is my shortest book too, to be fair, but it really poured out. It was
mm,
helpful that I could use because it's kind of near future in the timeline. I could use modern
yeah.
terms, which helped. It felt a bit, and it was actually first person. Everything else I've done has been third limited, and
Yeah.
somehow that was weird at first, but then it felt very freeing. It felt very freeing to have a first person perspective, and I could use a lot more modern day references for things. So
Mm,
it
I'm
made it a
jealous.
little bit quicker. I could make comparisons that were easier than having to think of a fantasy comparison. Sometimes you get stuck. What does this character
Mm,
actually know of in their world, in their
exactly.
life?
Yeah.
What can I reasonably use? Terms even that
Mhm.
you you weigh up all the time. Can I use a term like recently? I was like, can I use sous chef as a term? Because it's French and this is
Oh,
not
yeah.
French. I was like that. You
Yeah.
battle with these things in fantasy, whereas in
Mm,
Battle Spy, you just battle in the
that's cool.
class mechanics. I really enjoyed,
Mhm.
and the and the maths wasn't too bad. Like I had an Excel sheet, I had all the formulas. The problem
Mhm.
was that at some point, just
Cool.
as you do, I either got something a little wrong, or I didn't
Uh,
put one of one of the levels in properly into my Excel sheet. So I made a mistake at one point in the writing and carried it forward. And so then
Ooh.
as I was editing it, I was like, oh shit, I've reached this error,
Mm.
and it isn't just necessarily a case of tweaking. So I was like, okay, to fix this, I have to, I don't know, add another enemy for him to kill to get the experience or whatever.
Right.
It's
I see.
because I
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
to
Oh,
jostle
great
the
choice.
numbers. They got to a point where I got everything completely right, but I was for some reason off by exactly 100 health and 100 mana for the
Mm.
character, and I just cheated and I just had him eat a fruit that gave him a buff. That gave him the at the relevant point where I knew it was wrong. I was like,
Yeah.
no, I can't work it anymore. I'll just have him
Yeah.
eat this fruit, this magical fruit, and it gave him
That's
the
awesome.
health and mana, and then I was fine. It was off.
Yeah. That's good.
Um,
Only 100 as well. That's yeah. That's like conceivable. I like that.
yeah, but
Mhm.
but I enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed
Mm.
writing it. Um, I just didn't know where I would take the sequel. It was very standalone-ish.
Mm.
And I moved straight into Ascendant, thinking at the time, oh, I'll write two series back to back because everyone that's doing
Mm.
very well seems to be doing that. And I wrote Battle Spire so fast, I
Yeah.
thought, well, I'll do this one. That was
Yeah.
originally meant to be like a YA book that was 90,000 words to go to a trad
Mhm.
publisher. So that was, I thought I'll have two series that are kind of shorter books and I'll back them,
Yeah.
And then Ascendant
Yeah.
became
Smart.
165,000, and I didn't take it with a, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That went off.
Always does
It
that.
grew. It grew some legs, and going the
Got
trad
some
route didn't
wheels.
feel suitable for it. So
Yeah.
and then I
Yeah.
got sick, and then by that point it was sort of too late for Battle Spire 2, to which I
Mm.
still don't really have a clear idea because I thought the character work was so strong, just ended
Mm.
nicely. I think picking it up again would feel a bit lame, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah. No, well, never say never. It's like, yeah, I can know that feeling with Heart of Stone. It's like I could do something
Mm.
with it, and I'm gonna try and say that in a no spoiler way. Almost did, but like I could do, yeah, I could do something. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't trust myself. But like, yeah, it wouldn't feel. It would feel a little bit like when they kind of revive where they do a what's it, what they call, like, requel or something like that, where they reboot sequel, and it's like, yeah, it would feel like a little
Yeah.
bit forced. Yeah,
Yeah, I worry at this point I would just be forcing it. And I'd rather it stay as a strong end
yeah.
um, at this point. But yeah, never say never. But yes, I
You could do
mean
the yeah.
progression, and even in Ascendant and Songs of Chaos. I like it a lot. I mean, I like a hard magic system,
Hmm.
and it straddles. I mean, there's hard elements to it, and there's some softer elements in the kind of world.
Hmm.
The hard ranking, the hard levels of defined power.
Yeah.
I think it's it has its pros and cons. I mean, I like that it's got that structure, and so I like that
Hmm.
you can announce there's a character that's turned up on the scene at X level, and you get a
And yeah,
sense of
badass.
how strong they are just from that, and the character reacts, and you can have a lot of reactions in like the bowing and they can feel their
Hmm.
presence, or however you can do a lot with that very defined
Yeah.
sense of it. But it also does make it difficult to think, okay, well, how's Hulk going to overcome this situation, because they should be under this these villains or whatever are much more powerful, or however you set the situations up needs to be both believable but also um yeah, yeah, like what would be a good comparison? Okay, so like in every Marvel movie, all the power
Mm.
levels should be defined, but they're completely squishy as hell. And you've got
Yeah.
human characters going up
Exactly.
against god tier characters, and somehow they seem to be even in the film, and it's just not the
Mm.
case, right? Well,
Yeah.
you know, that's one of the things in that if you're writing something with very defined powers, if there's a really powerful being in the planet that's so well defined as being that powerful, then they should be able to sort things out. So you have to think, why are they
Yeah.
not sorting things out? If your character has to come up against them at some point, you've either got to level them up, or you're like,
Exactly.
well,
Yeah.
I can't have this work. So there's that sense of you can't just have your main character or the characters have a really good day. They can't
Hmm.
just necessarily win all the time through sheer determination or whatever, because they're going to get
Hmm.
their butts kicked. It's very defined, which
Mm.
um, which does mean you've got to, and that's good because you've got to pull them on the journey. And half the fun of
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
is seeing them going from all the way through those stages and seeing how they
Mm.
develop. But it does mean you've got a lot of development and a lot of work to do, which you've got other things to do in your plot, but you've got to keep weaving
Exactly.
that through. And so
Yeah.
that is the thing for me. I'm like, I want to keep the plot moving. I want other things to be happening, but I've got to keep this progression going. It's got to feel earned. It's got to be paced well, but it's got to be accelerated because I can't have them take 50 years to,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
definitely pros and cons. I would rather,
Mm,
I think I prefer it because I like the idea that when it comes to a really big encounter, a really pivotal moment of conflict, everyone knows a sense of what the main character can do and can't do, and what the enemy can and can't do. And
yeah.
then if they get through it, they've done something clever, or some other character moments happen, but it feels like
Mm,
very reasoned out and earned, and you shouldn't have anyone just calling coincidence or contrivance because if you've done that, then you've
exactly.
probably got it wrong. So
Mm,
it's very challenging. Um, that was a
yeah.
bit of my little rant on how things have gone on my
I like
end.
it.
You can see what I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah. No, it's
I
good
don't
to
know if
know
you
because
found the
like
same.
progression. Yeah, that's exactly it. I was just like, yeah, it's good to know that I'm yeah kind of struggling with the same things. Or I mean, the book's finished now. It's called Demon's Reign, by the way. I should have mentioned that. Yeah, it's the first in what's called the Bloodwood Saga, which should be coming out later this year, and I've co-written it with David Estes as well. So yeah, it's coming out from both of us, and it's going to be hopefully go down pretty well. I call it Avatar meets Venom, so hopefully I don't know. I just you never
So
know. And even though Dave and I have been kind of been like working kind of really closely on it, I'm still not sure. I need to kind of like send it out to like that kind of another set of eyes, like an editor, and see what people make of it. I'm too close. Book blind, I heard someone call it, and I like that.
it's just the sort of stuff. I guess you mentioned I skipped over someone's questions. I do apologize. They were asking what you mentioned writing stories as a child. What sort of stories were you
Mm,
writing then, and do they reflect in any
yeah.
way what you're writing now? Have your tastes changed, or are you
You,
just a big kid?
yeah, yeah, I am just yeah. I've never grow old. I mean, I grew up on fantasy. I mean, one of the first books, if not the first book. Yeah, first book was The Hobbit. I read a lot of the classic Narnia stories, Grimm's fairy tales, all sorts of stuff. And so when I decided to write, maybe not the setting, it was a very odd setting inspired by like nature documentaries. But I wrote, yeah, this is yeah, they will never see the light of day. But yeah, they were a fantasy world which monkeys were anthropomorphized, so they would talk. Humans kind of existed over the mountains, and it was based on like the monkey troops they have in southern India. And so I made a map and made all this world up, and it was like different races. There's like there was what did I have? Monkeys, langurs, rats, or something like that. It was a giant rip-off of Brian Jack's Red Wall series and all the Red Wall books, just like set in southern India. And I called it the Kanandapur Gang. And then the second book, which was like way much better. This is like very much like a 11 or 12-year-old writing. And then the second book was called The Thief Lord, which was centered around, in the same world, but later on. And it was, full of magic, full of creatures like giant hawks, mouse fortresses. It was very much epic fantasy. And so, yeah, I've always kind of stayed on the same path. And yeah, obviously then messed around with the genres kind of once I'd published. But yeah, they were kind of fun. And I kind of wrote half of a third one called Slave King or something like that, and it just got distracted by life, got into music instead, and then I thought I was going to be a pilot for a while. That was another thing entirely. Yeah, almost went into the RAF. That was fun. Got myself like a
Pilot or
scholarship.
writer, very different
I know.
paths. You,
I still geek out about planes. I still like, oh yeah, there we go. And so yeah, that was I've had like could have gone on some other paths. I was going to be a meteorologist at one point. But there's always like a creative like element, and yeah, it kind of I focused on music for a bit and then brought it back to books. So yeah, they've kind of each given me a little, I don't know, sort of something from my tool chest. Like music taught me a lot about being an independent artist before I learned about being an indie author. Yeah,
yeah,
kind of lucky, weird but lucky.
you're a bit lucky. I think that sums up our lives. Weird but lucky.
Yeah.
You might. I mean, you've written so much. I mean, you've written a lot more books than I have. So this question that someone's put in about problems, writer's block, if you've got
Mm,
issues with the
I saw
plot,
that one.
how do you get through this?
Ooh, good question. Many answers to be honest, because first off, I would say I'm a planner, and I kind of you know, planner and pantsing is obviously two ends of a kind of broad spectrum. So I kind of found myself planning a lot on the kind of the early world building stages, the early stages of like characters, and I will literally kind of list them out. What do they want? What do they look like? I'll do history of the world. I'll draw maps sometimes and things like that. So I kind of get not get around writer's block because I do have it, but I just have kind of a bit of a set path to follow. So I kind of maybe delay the bits where I might slow down and think, what's going on here? And so yeah, I kind of pants within the plan essentially, and then it kind of changes as I go through. So yeah, I would say I'm kind of like a little bit on towards, but mostly planning, but kind of I do pants here and there. Pants sounds so strange, doesn't it? And yeah,
You can
other than
switch. You
that,
can say gardening and
I
architect
do
if you
like
want.
that one. Yeah, but I always forget. I always want to be like gardener and I'm like janitor. Which one is it? I
Janitor.
always get confused.
The
Yeah,
janitor. The janitor's the person that cleans up the,
that's
you
it.
know,
Maybe I'll do both of them.
cleans up
Yeah,
the gardener's mess. Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, it's. I mean, that could be interesting. Actually, it could be a third writing style. Yeah, that's the kind of like the way I work, and that really sets up a lot of the kind of the thinking work as I'm going through the novel, which I can find can slow people down. So otherwise, yeah, it's kind of music that helps a lot. So I will have a set playlist I've really curated, janitored maybe over the last couple of years, and that I know that as soon as I put it on, I'm like writing mode. And so yeah, I try and focus on like just flow state essentially, and I just sit, listen to music, headphones on, stare out the window if I need to, but otherwise just kind of try and melt into the book, into the page, and let the plan or the characters do the work if I've kind of built them up enough. But yeah, writer's block does strike, so I try and go outside. I don't know, wander around the park for like half an hour. Uh, Clean. That sounds weird, but I'll just be like, right, I don't know, clean the kitchen. And as I'm cleaning, I'm thinking about other things, and I'll be like, I could do this instead with that character. Otherwise, yeah, just some days you need rest as well. Like life gets in the way. I do try and write every day. I mean, I'm always working. You know, I'm a full-time author. I work sunrise to sunset and beyond just on books and stuff. Like to my detriment. I need some hobbies. God damn it. But yeah, so with that, it's kind of like writing always comes first, but some days it can't. And you know, some days you also deserve a day off, and that's hopefully, yeah, I'm taking a half day off. I'm going to might download Elden Ring, and that you know will just kind of investing yourself or kind of getting into something else like that and taking your mind off it just regenerates, I think, the creative juices. That always sounds weird. The creative part of your brain, and then you'll come back to it with fresh eyes. So yeah, creative juices. Well, that's always an old phrase. I feel like just like disappeared. I'm like, ew. Yeah, but that's
Um,
it.
all
Yes,
good
I mean
points.
those
Yeah,
are some of my tricks. Yeah,
I think getting up. I think a bit of movement helps.
hydration is one I forgot as well. It's
Hydration.
crazy. Yeah, it's crazy how like if you work for a bit and you forget to drink, and then you suddenly find yourself being like, why can't I figure this bit out? It Have a glass of water. It works so much. It really is. It does, rather.
I bug people there a lot. I find if I talk it aloud to someone,
Mm.
I'll talk myself into the solution just by talking
Yes,
it through.
that's very
So
good.
I need a soundboard. I need someone to sort of sit there, mostly
Yeah.
listen and ask questions.
Hmm.
The most obvious questions they can think of. Like, and the fact that I have to answer those questions usually triggers something. Or just the
Exactly.
mere
That's
fact that
very
I've stepped it through
good.
aloud
Yeah.
means I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, actually, that does work, or this or that. Sometimes people ask me a question, and I think, oh yeah, why can't I just do that? And then you just need someone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I try to lean on a few writing friends that will be willing to brainstorm back and forth. I have my editor Brooke, um,
Mhm.
my long suffering girlfriend Pega. She gets a lot of this.
Yeah. That is
She's
fine.
gotten
Yeah.
quite good at just sort of listening to me. She goes, and then I go, "Oh, I figured that out." And she's like, "Oh, that's nice." Goes back
Just
to
smiles. Yeah.
yeah,
Rachel does
smiles
the
and nods.
same thing.
That's all. That's all you need to do. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but I find that still helpful. So helpful to the point that I'm worried I'm relying on it because sometimes I find it really hard to figure it out entirely on my own, or it's a
Mm.
lot longer. I know that it's an expedited process. If I have someone there to talk it through with, I'll get there so much quicker. So,
Yeah.
but I don't want to bug
100%.
people, but it's so much quicker. So help me out, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. Long suffering is the right phrase, I think. It's like, yeah, my girlfriend Rachel, I'll just be like, "Can I just talk at you for a minute?" And she'll be like, "Yes, I know what this means." And I'll be like, "Right, so there's this guy, and
yeah.
there's a demon, and blah blah blah." And she's like, "Mm-hmm." And especially because like she doesn't really read fantasy, which is absolutely fine, but she's into other things. I'm like, this must sound really weird.
Yeah,
But yeah,
something
so
explaining it, and you're like, how do I explain this without all this context? This is really bizarre.
yeah.
Bear with
But it
me.
strips it down. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. That's a very good point, actually. It's a very, very good one. Yeah, other than that, I'd say I can't really think of any others. No.
Mm. Well, as we go. Hopefully, that's helped someone out there. Bug someone and get them to ask you silly questions. You'll come to the answer
That's
will
it.
come to you.
Strangers on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just whoever, someone that will listen.
Yeah. Yeah. Even like talk to the mirror. No, that's too weird.
That's when you're practicing interviews, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you've been at this for 10 years, essentially over ten
Mm,
years,
mm.
12 years maybe. I don't know.
I
A long
think, yeah,
time.
come 11 years, definitely. Yeah.
If you could go back in time before you launched the written, what's the one
Yeah.
piece of advice you'd like to give yourself?
Excuse me. Very good question. I mean, the obvious one would be self-edit, you idiot. No, wait, the other way around. Don't self-edit, you
Don't.
idiot. You'll save yourself a bit of trouble in the long run. So, I mean, yeah, probably that one because from the off, it's important to like hook a reader in however you can, and mistakes do stand in front or do kind of stop people from kind of enjoyment, kind of reduce their enjoyment levels a little bit with a book, or be just distraction. So yeah, maybe some early readers that I had, kind of just like, nah, I'm not going to read this guy again, this hack. So yeah, probably it would have maybe kind of made the I don't know, the start just a little bit smoother. But otherwise, I mean, I tell you what, there is one thing, and I don't regret Scarlet Star at all. I just would have maybe put that trilogy later on in my kind of progress or like author journey, because I think I should have just stuck with Emaneska and kind of expanded that out, just kept that going, and write my own sort of Song of Ice and Fire. And to be honest, I have done that to an extent. Like my books are somewhat linked together, and I do have my own sort of Cosmere, which is kind of going to really take form with the next couple of years. Um, and yeah, I've been laying breadcrumbs everywhere for the last 10 years. So yeah, and it's sort of something that like I wish I'd kind of built up rather than being distracted by Scarlet Star, which isn't in my little world. Well, yeah, universe. So yeah, I'd probably do that, but that's more of a kind of like hindsight's 2020. Want to look back and business sense. Yeah, I didn't do a bad thing. It wasn't a mistake, but yeah, I could have done something slightly that was more within brand because it's kind of we, most people went with it. Well, it seemed like it, but it's kind of a hard sell being like, oh, so you like this kind of like frozen world with dragons and Norse myths and Norse gods? How about a fairy about this big who's the sidekick of a spoiled orphan in 1867 Wyoming? You're like,
Yeah, a bit
eh,
left field, as you say.
not
It's like,
quite. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was a bit left field. So yeah, I would have done that, but otherwise, no regrets. I have that kind of like motto of just like if I'm happy where I am now and pleased with myself and whatever, then obviously whatever led up to this shouldn't be regretted. So yeah, it's kind of how I approach it.
in this expanded universe that you've got, how many books are in that now?
Mhm.
Then,
That I can reveal. Um,
God,
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, Emaneska, it started off with that. So Emaneska is the main world. Um, and the maps for the Forever King and Heavy Lies the Crown was I first kind of announced the first connection. I'm doing like my own little MCU end credit scene almost, where it's Heart of Stone exists 500 years after Emaneska and Scouts and Chronicles. And so it's kind of that was the first reveal, and they actually meet some of kind of like the main character of Heart of Stone is called Task, and so yeah, the people from Emaneska have met some of Task's people and gone into the same worlds that are mentioned in that. So that was kind of a big reveal that I did with Forever King because the map. Actually, sorry, Heavy Lies the Crown because the map just is the same map as
yeah.
Heart of Stone. Yeah. As for that, there's a big ocean on the left hand side of Emaneska, and there might be something across it, and that's all I'm gonna say. And I might have already written
Right.
some of it. So yeah, but it's good. I
So
mean, yeah, I'm
that's
going to get
like
into
what, seven,
ultimate.
7 or 8 novels then so far that are released. Is that right?
Let's call it. Yeah, you could call it 10, but we'll call it 7
Okay,
for now. I'll
okay.
let people figure that one out.
7 for now. 7 for now. Um, Last little point. We didn't get into the little story of how we first met. It's not
Oh, yeah.
like a terribly. It's not super interesting, but I thought it's a sign of why, if you are aspiring to be a writer, I think you should try to go to some conventions if you can.
Mm,
Even
yeah,
if you haven't got
definitely know.
something ready yet, even if you're not publishing, even if you're just writing that
Mm,
first draft, or no matter where you are in the steps, if it's something you're quite serious to do, it's brilliant to go to these things to try and meet other people that are doing what you're doing.
mhm.
Um, and I'll set the scene for everyone. It
Dark and
was it
stormy night.
October, yeah, dark and stormy day in October
Yeah, yeah.
2015 or something like that. I think it was 2015. Yeah, it
I
must
think,
have
yeah, we
been
figured.
because it was like a few weeks before my first book was going to come out. I went along to FantasyCon in the UK. This is the British FantasyCon, and this was the year that Brandon Sanderson was guest of honor, so it was
Oh,
really busy.
I didn't get to meet him that
Um,
year, actually.
no, I think he's I think he's relatively reclusive at cons because otherwise he'd be mobbed, wouldn't he? Constantly.
Right.
So I feel for him in some ways, but yeah, yeah, that was 2015 of mine. Um,
Yeah.
I was there. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like a little lost lamb. And I think I
Wow.
just knew Ben from basically researching self-publishing and other publishing
Twitter,
things
wasn't
like that was happening, and some twittering probably.
it? Mm.
Went along, said hello, and
Yeah.
Ben kindly took me under his wing, sort of sat me down, calmed me down, bought me a pint, said, "Calm down, it's okay, let's talk it through."
I
And
think you were much suaver than you think you were. I think you kind of like, you we that's the thing. Or I don't know why, but I always like trying to put a blazer on for cons as well before I was like, nah, I'm just gonna wear like, I don't know, a graphic tee and get my tattoos out. But yeah, I think we both kind of had like the same idea. Just turn up and see what's going on. I did you send me a message on Twitter though, being like, hey, I see that you're here. I'm here also. Do you fancy meeting up in the bar or something like that? And I was like,
that
absolutely,
sounds
because
like
I
it.
didn't really have.
That sounds like it would have been sensible. So I will claim
Yeah,
that I did
sure. Yeah,
that.
that's what I mean. You're just like, oh, well, let's go for a pint. No, I think, I mean, at cons I normally found by the bar anyway. So I think, yeah, I was just like, well, I'm here. Come on by. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, meet a fellow author, and like, you were writing Dragon's Blade and or written because you were written one coming out a second one at that point. Written two.
Dragon's Blade 1 was coming
Yeah,
out soon. I
that
don't
was
know
it.
if I
Yeah,
I think I don't think I think I literally started the second one at the con. There
and
was like a morning.
that's
I
cool.
had a little moment of inspiration for the prologue, and sort of sat down
Yeah,
and wrote it out,
I love that.
pen
Yeah,
to
yeah.
pencil sort of thing. So I started it at that con. But
Mm.
yeah, very
I
early
remember
days.
seeing the cover. Yeah, no, it was
Yeah,
great,
cover
and
was
we I
done. Yeah,
remember. Yeah, we just chatted self-publishing for what felt like, well, we finished one pint and then we ordered a second and maybe a third
same.
or a fourth, and we just chatted for a couple of hours. And I think there was a couple of people I did know there, but otherwise, yeah, it was kind of when I was like getting more into the con scene. And I think there was, let's say, Gareth Powell was there. Yeah, kind of like we met a few peeps and had some more beers, and yeah, it was great fun actually. Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's
And
great.
lo,
Yeah,
a friendship was formed.
indeed,
Yeah,
surviving continental movements. And so, are you
exactly.
planning on going to any events in the coming year now that things have eased up?
I would love to. Yeah, it's my problem with travel at the moment is kind of twofold. Without getting into the boring details, it wasn't just COVID, but I'm on a visa, which is kind of in limbo at the moment because I'm waiting for permanent residency. It's just been a long decision, a long kind of process getting that done because of COVID. So I can't leave the country because I don't really. There's a chance I might not be let in. I'm sort of like in a implied status right now, which is yeah, fun. And so yeah, it's just kind of complicated and long, and there's people working on it, consultants and stuff like that, like immigration consultants, which are so very useful and vital. And so yeah, I'm just kind of waiting. And so as soon as I get that, I'll be traveling. Hopefully, I mean it's literally a case of any week now or any month now we could get it, and I'll be able to stay here for yeah a more permanent basis, which is good. So if that happens, let's say in the next month or two. I'd love to hit Dragon Con. Otherwise, yeah, I'll
Hmm.
be coming back for the UK. I mean, Bristol Con was always one of my favorites because it's like a smaller, slightly smaller scale. Slightly smaller scale con. That's hard to say. And there's a lot of like familiar faces there, and people, it's BarCon basically, and everyone kind of
Yeah.
converges on it, I think. And so, yeah, it'd be good to see, all the other fellow indies, and other trad authors as well, and just have a little chinwag, drink a few more pints. And so, yeah, I will. That's my hope. Yeah, UK for a few cons, and I've always wanted to hit Dragon Con. It just
Dragon
looks great.
Con, yeah, I'm thinking of Dragon Con this year.
Mm,
I'm thinking.
yeah,
No
I mean,
guarantees, but
it seems to be kind of like back on with a vengeance. You know what I mean? Because
yes.
was it cancelled? No, it wasn't cancelled last year, but it was cancelled the year before, maybe. Can't remember now.
I
But in
feel
any
like it was
case,
on
yeah,
last year, but it might have been reduced or something.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's
but
it.
it seems to be the big one. So yeah, thinking about that.
Oh,
Love to go to that. We'll see.
yeah,
Otherwise, I've got
yeah,
a few UK ones that'll hit up. Um, Two of them are in London this year, which is always helpful.
yeah. Which ones are they?
EasterCon,
Oh, of course, yeah.
which is like a sort of
Oh,
science
yeah,
fiction and
that's
fantasy
soon.
combo,
Mhm.
and then British Fantasy Con this year's in London. So
Oh, awesome. Yeah,
just looked at yeah,
that'd be
two of
cool.
them at the
Yeah,
same time.
I'd love to hit those. Yeah, that'd be great. But they're quite soon, aren't they?
EasterCon's April.
Yeah.
Fantasy Con's usually in the autumn, so there's some
Hmm.
time yet for that one,
Okay, that's good. Fingers
depending on when you're
crossed.
back. Yes, fingers crossed.
If Yeah, if anyone in the Discord happens to work for Canadian Revenue, not Revenue Agency, the Canadian Immigration Agency, that'd be great.
Help him out.
Yeah, just push it through. That'd be wonderful.
I hope. I mean, I really, yeah. It'd be great to catch up with you at Dragon Con. It'd be great to see you in
Absolutely.
person again.
Yeah,
These things are great, but nothing quite beats the in person thing. Um,
Bernard. Yeah. Thank
but
God for
I've also,
technology as well. Like that.
yeah. Well, thank
Yeah.
God for it. Yeah, we couldn't be doing any of this without it. The
I
Discord,
know.
everything. It's
I know.
been really great.
Yeah.
I realize it's about going for about an hour, so don't take up too much of your time. Uh, so I guess we can end it there, Ben, if that's okay.
All
It's been
right.
great. We could keep going
Yeah.
forever, and
It's been great fun.
I know I don't think people would stick around much longer watching us waffle on. But it's been great having you here. I always enjoy
Absolutely.
hearing these stories of people's beginnings and how they wrote that first
Same.
book, and it's always crazy. And yeah, it's wonderful. So just before you shoot off, would you like to tell everyone where they can find you online?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me as well. It's been great, great time, and thanks for all your questions. Hope I gave some good answers. And if you want to find me and more about my books, I have things like all sorts of like YouTube channels and TikToks, Patreon, all the good stuff. It's just at bengalley.com or linktree/Ben Galley.
Excellent. All right.
Nice and easy.
Thanks everyone who came and gave us questions today. That was really great. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.